A very good morning to everyone. It's a pleasure coming and talking to this esteemed group of people, the Uplift team, which is always striving to bring more values into the society through parenting, teaching, and various other kinds of workshops. So I'm very glad to be here. As parenting is the happy parenting, not just parenting. All parenting is not happy, that's what it means. So we are trying to work towards happy parenting, where the child is also happy and the parents are also happy. In India, parenting is considered as a very, very sacred task. And we think it's the gift of God to be parents. And that's how it is said everywhere also. We are blessed to have had a child, or we had a boy. We are blessed with a boy. We always use this word blessed, because we really believe that it's a blessing to be parents. So when it's a blessing to be parents, then why are we not happy parents, and why our children are not happy? So something is amiss, something is missing somewhere, and we are here to just figure that out, what's missing, and how to make it a blessing for us, ourselves, for the children, and for the society. Now, I'm not a biological parent to anybody, so I really am not an authority on that side of the parenting. But in a way, I am a parent to thousands of children who are studying in so many of these educational institutions. They come from all kinds of backgrounds, as you just heard. Some are from very, very underprivileged backgrounds. Some of them do not have their biological parents at all. Some are single parent children, and so on. So there's a variety of children who come from diverse backgrounds that we deal with. So our challenges are even more. At least when you have a child of your own, you know more or less about the child. But when you're dealing with thousands of children in schools which are residential, so it's literally a home to them. They do not have a second home. Like many of these children don't even go back during their holidays because they don't have a home to go back to. So we have to keep our hostels running even through the summer holidays, because the children need the hostels. They don't have a home to go to. So this is the kind of system that I come from, and I thought I will share a few insights based on what has been my experience with the parents of such children. As I said, they come from diverse backgrounds. Some have come from very, very good families. They have good backgrounds. They're children of doctors, engineers, and many other bureaucrats. On the other end of the spectrum, we also have children, as I mentioned, who are, so to say, orphans. They don't have a home or parents at all, but they all live together in the same community. They live in the same residential facility. They get the same quality of care and education. And so that's some kind of a equality or equitability that we try to achieve. And we do not make anybody feel greater or lesser, superior or inferior in the system. And that's something that a parent needs to do. When you have multiple children, many children of different aptitudes, you still need to deal with them with an even hand. And that is something a parent always faces the challenge about. So I'm just here to share a few insights. I thought I'll make it easy by simply using this word parenting itself, and to unveil or reveal some of the values that are inside that very word parenting. Let's begin with the first letter, P. And I think the P in parenting stands for priority. Your children are your priority. Everything else takes a back seat. When I see many of the people in the world today, they say we could not spend time with our children. We don't have time for our children because we are busy with our jobs. We have other things to do. We have personal ambitions. We have other commitments. And because of that, many times the children don't get the attention that they need. And that's where parenting starts failing. When you stop giving the right kind of priority to your child, and everything else gets prioritized over and above, that's when you get into trouble. And I'll give you an example. I had a couple who came, and they said that my children are studying in an international school, and it's very expensive, and we both have to work. We need 2 salaries to run the home and provide them the best education. So we do not have time, but we only meet our children on the weekends, because during the weekdays, by the time we are getting ready, children are already gone, and by the time we return, children have already slept. So there is no way we talk to them. We meet them on weekends. And then I told them, why do you do this? He said, because it's expensive to educate them, so we pay a lot of money for the education, and we need to earn, therefore we work and we don't find time. Then I said, this is what is going to happen tomorrow. When your children grow up, they will also be working very hard to pay for your old folks' home, and they will never meet you again. And whenever you call them, they will tell you that, you know, Ma, you know, Pa, we are working for you. We are taking care of you. Therefore, we have to work. We need the money, all the money to take care of you. But that is the time you will realize that you really didn't need their money in the first place. You really needed them. You wanted them to be around you when you needed them. But when you did not keep them as your priority, and when you were not available to them in their childhood, how are you expecting them to be available to you in your old age? And it's tit for tat. It's you sow, you reap what you sow. So priority is children. Your career is not the priority. Your social commitments are not priority. Your other ambitions and ideas are not a priority. The most important person in your life, once you're a parent, is your child. And it's a huge responsibility because, as I said, it's not given to everybody to be parents. I see a lot of, we run hospitals, we have our IVF department, we have parents, we have couples wanting to be parents, but they cannot be. Somehow they are not blessed to be parents. And I see the struggle, whatever social stigma and all the other mental issues that the mother goes through, or mother-to-be goes through, because she cannot become a mother. So I understand that parenting is a blessing, so we must prioritize our children. And a simple tip for all the parents. I saw this is wonderfully categorized to 0 to 6, 7 to 12, and beyond till 18 and then beyond. So I give these tips to our parents. I tell, when your child is in this age group of 0 to 6, just give them all the freedom. They just need to be free. They need to express themselves fully. Don't restrict them. Don't tell them too many rules, and don't try to control them. Just let them be themselves. You'll also get to know what they are truly made of, because they are naturally expressive. And that is the time when you really know what their true nature is. Because after that, they learn to pretend like all of us. So this is the time when you learn about your children. So allow them all the freedom. Don't restrict them too much. They will make a few mischief. They will break a few things or probably. But that is not intentional. That is not evil. It's just their nature, being playful. So allow that freedom. But between the age 6 to 12 or 7 to 12, if you can put it according to your category, teach them rules, what is right, what is wrong. And accordingly, you reward them for doing the right things, and not really punish them, but do not reward them for not doing the right things. So in a way, they understand what is right and what they need to do. And this is the time where you need to be very strict with them. Strict in the sense you should be firm, you should be assertive. I'm not saying you should punish them or you should harm them, but you should be strict. You should convey to them that this act has not pleased you. Whatever they have done, it is not an approved way of doing things. It's not right. So this is something that children start learning at that age, and you must be firm with them. And after 12 years, 13 years, when they are in their teenage, that is the time when they are developing personality, a way of their own. They have picked up a few things from you, from the surroundings, from the schools. Now they are growing into a person. They're no more dependent on others to decide. They want to make their decisions. They have their own individuality. And you must respect that. That is the time you must be very friendly with them. Most of the time, where parenting goes wrong is when they're very young kids. Of course, you give them all the freedom, and you keep giving them the freedom till they're 8 or 10. And then you start teaching them rules at 13. And they're not ready for it. And that is the time they have made their own rules. And you cannot interfere with them. And that's when they reject you. That's when there is conflict, and then you cannot come to terms with it. And then for lifelong, you have this burden of this relationship, which you cannot, find happiness in. Being a friend at that time, and you would see most of the children look for friends at that age, when they're in teenage. Before that, they're happy with their parents or siblings. But that is the time when they start looking, because they're growing into a person who has a mind of his own, and they want their kind of people around them. So if the parents can fill that gap largely, then they would not look for friends on social media apps, and they won't engage with strangers, which is sometimes very risky. And we have dealt with a lot of cases where kids have gone out and made friends with strangers, fake profiles, and then gotten into a lot of trouble. And later we had to really do a lot of hard work to kind of remedy the situation. So we avoid that. If the children are finding friends in their own home, within their family, they don't need too many friends outside. They still need a few, but not so dependent on them. So that is when you have to become friends with them. And I always say, child gone wrong is parenting gone wrong. It's not really the child that has gone wrong. Somewhere we did not do the right things for the child. Okay, so P is the priority. So prioritize your children over everything else. Then it comes A. Now when they are the priority, you have to be available to them. If you tell the child, you are the most important person in my life, and then you are not available to watch his football game, or you are not available to go out with the child for some party or picnic, or even to attend the school's meeting with the teachers, then what are you saying? You're saying one thing and you're doing another thing. So you have to be available to the child at all times. He is your priority, or the child is your priority. Everything else can be kept aside. That is the most important thing. And I find a lot of these parents wanting to pass on this responsibility to somebody else, to their drivers, to the ayahs, to their caretakers, to the crash, to the schooling system, and things like that. Sometimes to the friends of the children. But you have to be first available. That's another thing. Many children complain. For example, when we have parents-teachers meet, some children don't have parents, as I mentioned. So when the parents of other children come, these kids feel terrible because they don't have parents. So some of our teachers double up as parents, saying that I am your parents, so I will be talking to your respective class teacher. Some of our people, devotees or followers who are there in our mission, they develop as their parents. So they feel safe and secure that yes, my father or my mother or some father figure is available to me. And I'm not just abandoned. Imagine a child who has a father or a mother and they are not available to the child. It's very demoralizing. They almost feel orphaned. So it's a traumatic experience for the children. So be available is the second thing, keeping all else aside. And actually when they are the priority and you are available for them, you're responsible for them. You can't, as I mentioned, outsource all the parenting to the systems around, support systems like the crash or the teachers and ayahs and caretakers. You are the most important person. You are responsible for your child. You are accountable for what happens with the child. And don't blame others for your child's behavior. And worst of all, don't blame the child. Because child is learning. You call the child, you're dunce, you're a useless fellow, you're no good. You'd say such words, that's the end of your relationship with your child. He would never want to come around and meet you again. So that is the issue. Most of the parents, we all want somebody to blame our faults on. Very difficult to accept that we went wrong. And that happens in most of the cases of parents who are super busy or they're superly intelligent, are very capable, but their children are not as talented or skilled or capable. And there is an inferiority complex. The child is always hiding from the parents because he's only going to hear such words which are not agreeable, not acceptable. But I see this happening to many children whose parents say, when I was your age, I was doing this. I was your age, I was getting such marks. When I was your age, I was going here, there. The child feels so traumatized. I'm not as good as you. And they feel terribly pressurized because they are not them. You see, the children are born, as Khalil Gibran says, you are born, children come through you, not from you. They are lives longing for itself. So they have come through you have instrumented this act of bringing the children into the world. But you don't own them. They are not from you. They are not replicas of yours. So don't expect them to be another you. That's not true. They have their own personality, aptitude. They have their own inner talents, ideas. And we have to respect that. So when they do something, don't go and kind of blame them or blame the people around. Look at yourself. Have you done the right things? So many parents don't accept that they can go wrong. And I've seen parents who live in that denial forever. And when the children grow up and they get into all kinds of issues, they have their social behavioral issues are there, their mental issues are there. After some time they go for seeking help from, other people, counselors and things like that. And when they are told that actually you could have done some things right, they say, no, I did everything right. There's nothing wrong with me. And it's very difficult to convince. And I have seen a lot of these parents who after 20 years of terrible parenting finally come to terms with this idea that they did not do the right things. And they keep living in denial that their child is not them. They want their child to be better than them or better at whatever they're doing. A doctor's child has to be a doctor. An engineer's child has to be an engineer. There's no rule book like this. But they make rules like this and traumatize the child. So responsibility, take care, be accountable for your own child's behavior because you are responsible for it, nobody else. Then education, which is the most important part of the child's learning. Education is not just putting him in a good school and paying for it. Education is a process where you involve yourself in the process. So just attending a PTM is not enough. You have to be involved and understand what the child is going through, how the child is going through, what he's doing. And most important, the other aspects of education which you don't learn in school. Your family values, culture, your traditions. That gives the child a sense of belonging to that family. Otherwise, the child feels lost. And there are a lot of competing ideas in the child's mind when he's learning from everybody around. But your family values are your family values. That's why you are a family and you're different from the neighbor's family. And that value system comes only when you spend that kind of time with the child and take responsibility, be accountable for the child's learning and education. So I wonder how many parents actually spend time with the children, going through their homeworks or other assignments or project works. Most of the time, they have given a tab or a computer or some resources, and they think we have done our job as parents. This is where I say that they have to involve. And when do they pick up these values? By looking at you. You can't put a list that these are our 10 family values, let's start practicing from Monday. It's not. It's what you practice on a daily basis. They watch you, they learn from you by observing you. So that observation is how children learn. Much is learned by they seeing you do what you do than what is being told. So that is why I'll say the other aspects of life and other values are some things that parents have to teach by themselves. No teacher can do that job for you. An earlier time when we had joint families, we had other elders in the family, especially grandparents, who was doing a fantastic job of this. They would tell them stories of their families, or their past, or their forefathers, and that's how these values were getting passed on. But today with nuclear families, this is getting difficult. In all the countries I see this, even in a country like India, traditional society, that's where, even there we see this difficulty because no more grandparents are staying with the children. So that's not happening. The passing on of family values is not happening. That's another issue why families are breaking apart. Children don't feel any bonding or any belonging to the family. So they move on and they do things. And again, as I said, you end up in old folks' home, or the government has to make a law that you can't abandon your old parents. Otherwise you'll be penalized. That's not the way how families work. The next one, negotiation. I think this is another skill that today's children need to be taught, and parents need to learn, because children are very clever. They have a lot of information at their fingertips. I'll just give an example. One of my friend's child wanted to come to see me. He was a small kid. So naturally he didn't have a holiday, so they said we will see him another time. And the only excuse they gave us, flight tickets were very expensive, so we cannot fly. You know what this fellow did? He went to the computer, he searched, Googled, found out the ticket prices and said, you are lying. Look at the tickets are cheap and you are lying to me. We can actually go if you want to. And the parents were taken aback. Where did he learn to do this? He is negotiating better with them, you see. He's telling, I want this. Parents say, we don't want that. So you have to find a middle ground. You have to come to a middle path, the golden mean with children, because they're getting very, very intelligent and clever. They're more informed than all of us. And with every new generation, every 10 years I see, their IQ levels are going up. Their ability to communicate and negotiate is going up. So parents have to pick up these skills. So if you simply say, as somebody said, my way or highway, that doesn't work anymore with kids. It has to be our way. We have to sit down together and talk to each other and then come to a conclusion why we would do this together or why we would not do this together. And sometimes you may be able to convince the child, sometimes the child might convince you. But you have to agree to talk to each other. You can't have it your way all the time. I said so. This is how it's always done. You are still a kid, what do you know? These arguments don't hold water anymore. You have to sit down and talk to them. And many times in our schools also we find children deviating. I tell the people, sit down with them and ask them what makes them do what they're doing. So there has to be a thought process. A child is not a fool. He's not just doing things like that. Something must be going on in the mind of the child. Please understand. So now this age is come down to maybe 6-7 years old. Children are able to negotiate very well what they want. And so both sides it won't work. The child saying it's my way or highway, starts throwing tantrums. That's not going to work. At the same time, parents saying, I said so, so you must do it. That's also not going to work in today's times. You have to sit down and talk to him and spend that time. Spend that time. I know it's easier to just bulldoze them, but it is not right. It is, you have to sit down, and once you start doing it at an early age, all your life you can talk and you can have a conversation. So that is why these skills are important for parents also to understand, see from the child's point of view, and come to some kind of a middle ground of understanding what is agreeable and acceptable to both the parents as well as children. This is an important value. I call parents their trustees. As I just mentioned, parents are instruments of God. The children have been brought into the world through them, but the children are not from them or because of them. They have their own life. And that is why you need to respect that. You need to agree to that. You cannot fight that. So I say parents are not the owners, but they are custodians of the children. Children are the property of the society. They are the citizens of the world. And you cannot have all the control that you want to exercise on them. That's not going to work. They have come here for a purpose. And if you understand most of the ancient cultures, they believe that every human being is born with a purpose. And the only reason why we live is to fulfill that purpose, to fulfill our destiny. And every child's destiny is different. So you should not be shocked when the child is not exactly like you, are mirroring all your ideas and thoughts, because he or she has a plan of her own, a God's plan or what life's plan, as you can say. So parents are not owners, they're custodians. What will help you do? What will this help you with? You will look at things objectively, not subjectively. My child, it has to be this way. That's not the way. You start looking at the child in an objective way, in a broader sense of how the child fits into the society, how he's going to be a positively contributing citizen in the future, whether he's going to be an artist or engineer or a doctor or a businessman or a political leader. It depends on the child, not on you. So these are something that we understand. And if you remember, or some of you might have practiced, at least I believe it's also there in other cultures. But in Indian culture, we would put a baby in front of a couple of items. You see, we'll place a few things like toys, money, books, and a few other things. At that point in time, we'll tell the baby to go. It's a small baby, so it goes and picks up things based on its instinct. And we believe that it's bringing something from, in our culture, at least we believe in previous lives or whatever, or inbuilt nature. So the child picks up things, then we understand the child is intellectual or business-like or other way, a playful one. Anyway, that helped us understand the basic idea of what child is all about. So we become trustees of the child. And his child is in our care. We don't own the child. So therefore, we cannot force our way. We can only help the child. We can only facilitate. We can only mentor. We can only engage with the child to help the child become what it's supposed to become in the future. So that will help us to remain less attached to the child. Attached in the sense individually being very forceful. We will allow the space that the child requires to grow. And that is something possible when you believe in the trusteeship of children. And as I said, they have their own purpose in life that needs to be respected. And we must always remember the word called blessing. Child is a blessing. So we are blessed to take care of a child. And that's the way we should look at it. It's a God's property in our custody, or society's property in our custody. We must just look after it very well. And one day pass it on to the society, and so that the child can contribute. So that's trusteeship. And I is investment. While we make investments for children, we buy a property so that their future is safe. We invest in plans which are for children's education, insurance in ourselves so that the child is safe. While we are so happy and so interested in making those investments, we don't realize that the biggest investment is the child itself. And we must invest ourselves into the child, not just our money. Every part of our being should be invested in developing the child. As I said, you are custodians, you are accountable, you are answerable to the society tomorrow if the child is not growing well and becomes detrimental to the societal well-being. Then you are accountable, you are answerable to that. And that is why you must invest all of yourself into your child. Your thoughts should be occupied with the child's welfare. You can't have too many things running in your head. That's why I said parenting is a 24/7 job. It's not to be done on weekends. It's not to be done when you come back home from your office. It's not something that you can choose not to do if you don't want to do. It is something that is an integral part of you when you are a parent. It's the most important job that you're doing. So that is the greatest investment even for the society. Your good child given to the society is a great contribution of the parents to the society. A bad child given to the society is a great disservice done by the parents to the society. So it's not just about your child being good to you and your family. It's also about the child being good to everybody around you and should contribute positively to the society. Where are criminals coming from? Did they not have parents? They too had parents. Nobody was born without a parent. Biologically, it is not possible. Then why did they end up making it worse for the society? So what went wrong is the question. As we know the stories there, a child stole for the first time and the mother encouraged, saying, "They're very good, next time steal better." And one day he was about to be hanged and he asked to see his mother as the last wish. And when the mother came, he bit her ears. And everybody was shocked. How could he be so bad to his mother? And then he said, if my mother had stopped me the very first time I stole from my schoolmate, today I would not be hanged. I would not have reached this place. So that's where something somewhere went wrong, and that is why the child ended up being a criminal. So I don't see why a child would be a criminal if he has got a good background of good parenting, good education, and good support from the society. So it's an investment that we all should make together. They say it takes a village to raise a child, and today it takes the whole world to raise a child. Because the child is connected to the whole world. He's receiving information from all parts of the world. knowingly, unknowingly. So it's an investment we are making. We better be serious. When you're very serious about your investment in the next apartment or the next real estate or the next investment option like a stock or a bond, and you watch it every day. Most of the Singaporeans do that, I believe. They wake up and they open the phone and look at their portfolio. Where did it go? Look at your child every day with the same eagerness that your investment in child is really growing well. And never give up. Parenting, end of it. Never give up on your child. See, children can go wrong. They have the right to do so. They are children after all. They are still growing. They are not adults. They are not grown up like you. We go wrong so many times being adults, being so-called grown-ups. Children will definitely go wrong. Don't give up on them. If you give up on your child and you neglect them, then they have nowhere to go. You are the safety net. You are everything to the child. And if you give up on them, nobody is going to support them. The child feels abandoned, feels cheated. It feels orphaned. And that trauma, I have met people in many parts of the world. I know some gentlemen who have been very successful business-wise or whatever. But deep down the child, the inner child in them is still feeling the loss of love. Still feels angry. And much of their behavioral, whatever ways in the society is because of their inner child which is still hurt. The child is still traumatized. And that's not settled for them, despite now, probably the one I know I'm talking about is a 75, 80-year-old man. But even today, the child within the rejection that he faced from his own parents is still hurting him. And so he gets angry, he gets rebellious, he gets frustrated. Anytime there's a rejection or a failure, he reacts violently. So sometimes we wonder, why would he do that? He's such a popular and a famous businessman. He had made billions. Then why does he behave like this? And we go back and see it's because of the childhood traumas. And the childhood trauma is the only one, that he was rejected and neglected by his own parents. They felt he was no good. And of course, later he went on to become what he became. But still, the inner child in him is crying. And that is the scar or the hurt that he's still carrying in his heart, even after 8 decades of his life. So this is where don't give up on your child. And children are sometimes troublemakers, sometimes they're difficult. And all children in the family are not going to be the same. The worst thing that you can do is to prioritize one child over the other, you see. You make favorites out of your own children. That's the worst sin, the worst crime that you can commit. When you make one child feel lesser than the other. And compare and contrast and say, your brother is so good, why are you not like that? That makes the child angry, and he never feels equal, he never feels accepted. And that creates a lot of trauma, may not say it, but eventually in his or her life, it will get expressed at some point in time or the other. And so that is something that I do not want people to give up on their children. Worst is some of the parents, they give children to us in the schools, residential schools, not because of how great our schools are, because they just don't want to deal with their children. They're done with them. They just want to deposit them in our institutions and wash out their hands, saying that good riddance. And they almost feel sorry or feel that it was a mistake to have that child. Imagine the plight of the child who feels like his parents don't want him. It's terrible. It's terrible, that sense of rejection. So don't give up on your child. It may be difficult, but now for whatever, it's a blessing that has come your way. You have to learn a few life's lessons through your children, perhaps some patience, some kindness, some forgiveness. And that's the growth, your inner growth that the child is bringing to you. So utilize every single issue as an opportunity to grow as an individual, as a parent. Probably that is what the child has come to teach us. But don't just abandon the child and reject and give it up. That's the worst crime. So the trauma of rejection is something that a lot of children face in the society today. A lot of mental issues are because of that. So they look for love outside the family. They want to make friends with strangers, some fake friends. And they get into a lot of other issues. And that is the reason. The reason for it is because parents are neglecting them. They have rejected them in some way or the other. Not physically rejected as to kick them out of the house or something, no. But mentally they have rejected the child. The child lives a life of his own. Under the same roof, parents live their own life. That is something which is very traumatizing for many children. And last is I told them to decision making, you must teach the children. How should they make a decision even if you are not around? And the one yardstick for making decision is the greater good of all over the individual good. So if you teach the child that we must make sacrifices for the greater good of all, sometimes we have to give up things that we want to have only because it will only it will be better for everyone in the family or in the community and society. This is something that every child must know. You call it value education, you call it moral principles, you call it societal, whatever, behavioral principles. Put it under whichever bracket you feel comfortable with, or a spiritual calling. But the idea that every child must be taught to make decisions which are for the good of all and not just for individual's sake is a moral responsibility of every parent. But how do you teach that? By you practicing it. When you make sacrifices for the greater good of the family, for the greater good of the community, the child learns. And that is how you make a better human being out of a child. You can make a better professional out of that child, or a better, whatever, a citizen of the country, but a better human being. A better human being who cares for others. And that is something you can teach by doing it yourself. And I always say, if you believe in God, then every good is God, because G-O-O-D is good and G-O-D is God. So if you believe in divinity and God, believe in good. Even if you don't believe in God, still believe in good. That is the idea. That you teach them by doing it yourself, so that he makes or she makes the decision wisely. Every time they come across this crossroads in life, where they have to choose between their individual good and the greater good of all, they should have the courage and conviction to choose the greater good of all. So I think that's kind of summary of what I felt that parenting is about. And if you think the child is the priority, then you'll do everything in your might and more to be available, to be responsible for the child, to sit down and have a conversation and not just have your way every time. To believe the child is in your custody, you're a trustee of the child and you don't own the child. To invest yourself, your life, your every part of your being in the child's growth, because that's the biggest blessing that has come your way. To never neglect, never reject the child for whatever the things that the child lacks, because every child is unique, special, has a purpose. And at the end, as I said, teach them to take decisions for the greater good of all. That's how we can create better societies. So if you're already parents, then you're already blessed. When you become a couple, when you commit to each other, you are actually being chosen by God for a greater purpose, to represent God in the world. And God is, if you believe in God and you believe in the creation, then you believe that God is the ultimate parent to all. And when you become a parent, you are actually expressing that divinity through you. You're blessed, you're chosen, you're special, because it's not given to all. I've seen couples struggle to have children. They don't have children. And if you have a child, you're already blessed. And if you're a teacher, you're the second parent to the child. You are doubly blessed. So these are the things that you should really count every day, or count your blessings to be a parent. Even if you have a difficult child, at least you have a child. And that's a blessing. So count those blessings and count them again. And that is the way to be happy parents. And I'm sure happiness is something that you have to find for yourself. It's hiding in every little thing in life. And you see where you can find it. It's hiding in the plain sight. So parenting has to be a happy effort, happy experience for both the child, for you, and for the entire society. So this is my 2 cents of advice to the parents.